Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today we're going to be taking a look at another interesting folding knife. This is the steel will Scylla, or Scylla. I think it's pronounced Scylla. Very odd sort of, it's this area up here, right? It has these external stops that also function as the means of deployment, as a forward flipper, or you can just sort of wheel it around. A lot of people wanted to know in the unboxing, can it be used the same way as an Emerson wave, where you pull it from the pocket and it catches the seam of your pants and deploys on the way out? Yes and no. If you're wearing jeans or some really, dense pant material, and you slide it off just right, yeah, it will deploy. But if you're carrying something that's loose and will shape around the object that you're pulling against, right? The sweatpants and like athletic shorts will get caught up underneath it, and it won't deploy, or it'll get stuck in your pocket. So kind of, I guess, is the answer to that. Thank you so much to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. If you'd like to get your hands on some cool stickers and some other exclusive benefits, there's of course a link right down in the description. You're supporting me in the world to me. And please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Shout out to the Apex Pass Run group for sending this, and by extension the steel will manufacturer. This is a $59 knife, and I will be linking it down in the description. There are a couple of different variants of it, so you can check those out. I'll also link steel will knives in general, so you can check them out. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. So overall length of the Scylla coming in at about 7 3/4 inches overall. Blade length is coming in, depending on where you want to measure it, here or here, 3.5 inches to 3.6 inches. Blade length is coming in at about 3.3 inches overall. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco Para 3? Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 7 1/4 inches overall. And last but not least, the Benchmade Mini Griptilian coming in at 6.75 inches overall. How's the action in the sky? This is running on bearings. It's really hard to see in there. You can pick up my flashlight down in the description. It almost looks like, initially I thought maybe it was nylon, but I went and watched Nick's disassembly of it, and no, there's bearings in there. That's just the bearing cages are plastic or nylon, which is often the case with many knives using bearings. But yeah, the action's great. Honestly, it's just about fall shut, really snappy. There's a lot of room up here to, basically engage, and then this, because they have thumb studs on it, it's one of those where you can turn your thumb sideways and you really can't miss. This is one of the most comfortable front flippers I've ever used, and it's just because there's so much space there. Now, I can see why, in some situations, I guess I can see how this might accidentally snag, even like on the way out. I think it's pretty unlikely, but it could. They're also slightly wider than the frame, which is kind of annoying. But if I'm being honest, I'm kind of struggling to come up with a consistent circumstance where that would be an issue. I guess it's creating a little bit of unnecessary thickness, but not crazy. It's also not uncomfortable, right? So there are some facts about what is normally annoying with some things with some other knives, but it's weird. I kind of just appreciate that it is like this, because it makes it so easy to deploy. A lot of times with front flippers, because this area right here there's no thumb studs, it's just this area and it's jimped, right? So you can get a hold of it and you can front flip it, but after like 10 or 20 flips, it starts to really wear your finger down. It's not really fun to do anymore. So I don't know. I kind of like that it's there. You can't really do like a thumb, but you just end up doing more of the same. It's kind of like a front flip from the side, and then a reverse flick just doesn't make any sense because you're going that way, right? But it is cool. The fidget factor's there, and it's very convenient. It's very easy to use. You can just sort of slowly wheel it out. However, I think that's kind of cool. I kind of like that, right? Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. We'll get out my WIA bit selector and WIA magnetic driver, and also my Scout driver. These are all listed down in the description. Some of them are expensive, some aren't. These guys aren't. This guy is. So if you'd like to pick those up, you can. Very recommendable. I'm going to guess the pivot is a T8 because that's usually the case. Yeah, oh, that actually could be tightened down just a little bit. I wonder if I just change the action up. No, it just needed to be tightened down just a little bit. Let's give it a little bit more and see what happens there. Whoops, pinched my finger there. That is definitely something that can happen. If you put your finger right here, guess what? That's gonna, we'll talk about that here in a sec. A little bit too much there, but yeah, we're good. And centering's just a little bit off, but you know, on knives like this, or any knife, you know, you flip them a whole bunch, right, and then you adjust it. Maybe the centering's off. Maybe you need to readjust the handle screws. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit as well. I'm going to guess the body screws are T6. In fact, I can tell they're definitely T6, right? Yeah, T6. And there's a lot of them. I don't like T6. It's not a deal breaker. Just be careful when you're disassembling the knife because they like to strip. Let's go ahead and do carrier profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's a little bit thicker and, you know, in scales, and then it's even thicker because of where the thumb studs protrude right over the scale. It's not that big of a deal, but it's like, why? Why didn't you just make them like flush with the scales, right? So, okay, no big deal. Height and length up against two knives that have awkward carry profiles and nobody ever really complains about, PM2 and Para 3. Lengthwise, it's a little tiny bit longer than Para 3, definitely shorter than PM2, not quite as tall as either of them, but definitely a little bit thicker. We are looking at a combination of steel for the blade. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of blade stock thickness on this guy. I'm gonna guess that's 140 thousandths. That's my guess looking at it. Oh, I was looking through the camera. Let's see here. Yeah, okay, 138 thousandths, 140 thousandths, something like that. You're looking at a combination of, I'm gonna guess this backspacer is aluminum, but then steel, G10, and then steel for the blade. So, and then on the inside here, let you guys take a look. There is a little bit of milling on the inside of this front scale, so that'll help a little bit with weight reduction. Your weight on the Scylla is coming in at 4.44 ounces. Okay, not a big deal. Just remind everybody the very celebrated Ritter Hogue comes in a little heavier at 4.55 ounces. 4.4 ounces is not something that I shy away from. In fact, it's in my preferred carry range. If you subscribe to the whole under 4 ounce thing or the ounce and inch thing, maybe it's not, you know, a perfect cup of tea, but it's pretty close, right? Somebody, you know, wearing looser pant material, lighter pant material, you may not enjoy this as much. If you're used to carrying a full-size knife and you wear, you know, pants like jeans or work pants, not going to be a big deal at all. It might bother you a little bit, especially if this gets caught on the way out, but I feel like it's pretty unlikely. I had this in and out of jeans a few times, and it didn't really get caught. It was only when I, you know, really tried to, like, I mean, the thing is you really have to angle it exactly right to get it caught. But it can get caught, especially if you're wearing you know, sweatpants or athletic shorts. It can get caught, and it'll actually stop the knife. It'll halfway deploy the knife and get caught right against your leg, which is not safe. So that might be an issue for some people. That's worth pointing out. Pulling it out naturally, I generally wear jeans. Pulling it out of my pocket naturally, I honestly did not have a problem with it. But, I mean, if you need a knife really quickly, it could get caught. So, I guess just you know, take that for what it's worth. Let's go ahead and take a look here at the anatomy. So, what we're looking at for the steel is D2. These knives are manufactured in China. They do have some knives that are manufactured in Italy. This is not one of them. Peel ply texture G10 that has some nice chamfering all the way around. A couple of little places that are a little bit pokey just because of the nature of the design, but it isn't anything too crazy, not something that I'm really going to come down on it for. Fit and finish is pretty good all the way around. Fitment of the fasteners looks really good. I don't have much of an issue here. You can see here that the fitment, how these studs sort of fit into place back here, the fitment is nice. They do act as external stops, which means this is extremely solid on lockup, and that's nice. This is a satin finish blade. I would have really liked if they did tumbled. I am sick of seeing satin finishes, but some people like it, and honestly, they did a good job knocking this area down right here. This is not super sharp or anything like that. Flat carries out about 70% the length of the blade, right? Carries reasonable thickness, actually quite a bit of thickness out to the tip. Pretty durable setup here. That we have this kind of drop point, kind of, you know, like the drop is kind of confusing. There's a nice wedge on it. It's kind of its own thing. I mean, you call it drop point, you could call it a, you know, some sort of modified sheep's foot thing, whatever. The important thing is that it does come to a reasonably thin cutting edge. It's not a laser beam, but it's definitely not thick. It's going to be just fine for EDC tasks. Plenty of cutting edge, lots of belly, really nice. I like that they kept most of the stuff off the blade. Scylla and then F79D2. It's not, you know, it doesn't need to be on there. I don't know why the name of the knife needs to be on there. The steel wheel is fine. D2 is fine, right? Especially if it was like down here. This doesn't need to be on there. It would have been nice if it had a steel wheel up here, but that's a aesthetic thing. I'm coming down on it for like little nitpicky preference things. It doesn't affect the performance of the knife in any way, so you can think of that however you will. Very large sharpening choil down here. If you want to risk it, you can put your fingers down here. I probably wouldn't. I'd probably just stay back here. You are kind of a ways from the cutting edge, though, so I can see why you're going to be tempted if you're trying to put a lot of pressure into a cut. This area could have maybe been a little bit better, a different shape, something like that. Not that big of a deal. No jimping, but there is sort of a little dip in here where you can rest your thumb. And honestly, ergonomically, it's pretty comfortable other than this little area right here on the pocket clip. It's got that sort of goose head thing going on, but it's really not bad. That's the only spot, and maybe right here I can see after a while, considering where this is, I can see you kind of rubbing your skin raw if you're in, you know, variants. But then again, if you're really going to be using your knife that hard, that consistently, you should probably be wearing gloves, which would remedy that, and then you won't have literally this happening. Somebody asked me about that the other day. That was a I wasn't paying attention, and it was the outside knurling on a bar at the gym actually did that to my hand over a period of time. But yeah, that can happen, right? So wear gloves. But anyways, yeah, I think the fit and finish all the way around looks really, really good. It's very easy to manipulate. Lots of access to the liner lock. Nice large area right here where the blade's not going to come down on your fingernail, so that's nice. Truthfully, I've had a lot of fun deploying this over and over and over again. If you put your finger back here and you do this, you're going to get pinched. Even after a while, after knowing that that's there, I keep wanting to naturally, like, this finger keeps creeping up here, and every now and then I'll get a nasty pinch right there. I think that's the case with most things. You're going to adapt to it, and you'll probably learn, like, don't put your hands there, idiot. And you won't get pinched anymore, but you definitely can. You definitely can and probably will get pinched if you pick this up and use a lot. But for the most part, my experience in deploying it has been very satisfying. It's very snappy because of the amount of leverage you can get, you know, by doing it this way or by doing it this way. Lots of leverage, very satisfying on the flip. That's one of the main highlights of this knife. The blue backspacer adds some nice, you know, breakup of the monochromatic color scheme of this knife. So that's cool. They have another one that's blue and black, and I don't know what color the backspacer is, but that's fine. That doesn't bother me. There's a little lanyard loop back there for people who like lanyards, and the pocket clip is, it's okay. It doesn't carry shallow. It doesn't carry necessarily ultra deep. It's just kind of a stamped clip. It's that goose head thing. Why don't I like that? Because it's made to accept up to only a certain thickness of pocket seam. So if it were ramped straight like a continuous upward slope, then it would just ramp over any thickness of pocket seam. So that's a thing. It's every now and then you have to fight it. Man, I have to take an extra movement to pin it in my pocket. I know, right? I have to point that out because it makes me mad. I want everything to just work. Like I don't want to have to fight it or think about it, right? So the pocket clip's whatever, right? It's okay. It'll carry the knife, and it sits well, right? I don't really have a problem with how it carries. It's just that bill thing, right? It's gonna get snagged probably. The knife locks up at a healthy 60% or so. Centering's just a little bit off, and honestly, I have seen that. I'd probably wave it off, but I've seen that with a few steel wheel knives. Now, I have a video on how to adjust your knife and get it centered. In my opinion, nowadays, any knife that costs more than about 30 bucks should come perfectly centered, right? So if it's off-centered, it's like, come on, you know? But if you want to get it centered, I've got a tutorial on that. It's in my, I think it's in my discussion playlist. It involves wedging a piece of paper over and tightening down the pivot all the way, then tightening down all the screws, then loosening the pivot, and you actually can get the blade to center up and still have really good action and still have no blade play. So you can check that out if you want to. It's just kind of annoying. I wonder what happens if we take the driver and, you know, earlier in the episode, I tightened it down, and I'm wondering if maybe that made it come off centered. So what oh yeah, so okay, so hang on. Maybe I'm complaining about nothing here. Let's go ahead and tighten it and get it exactly centered. Okay, and the action's very smooth. A little bit of play though. So if we keep tightening, what's going to happen here is the blade is going to keep coming over, right? So now the blade is slightly off-centered and still has a little bit of blade play. So what we need to do is tighten it a little bit more. And now it's way over here. Still smooth, no blade play. So it's off-centered. I'm sure I could get it centered. But it should come centered. It just should be that way, right? Now, you could argue maybe some of the handle screws came loose, and maybe that's why I said, maybe. I don't think it's that big of a deal. In this price range, it's like, that's mildly annoying, right? If this is a $200 knife, I'd be like, no. But it's not. It's a $60 knife. Something that you can easily adjust at home with common tools. So not that big of a deal. Okay, so what are my thoughts on this guy? Well, little complaints. You can definitely get pinched by the thumb studs if your fingers aren't in the right place, right? They are wider than the frame, which is odd. Why didn't they make them flush? Not that big of a deal. The pocket clip is a goose head, so whatever. I don't like that. It's got some T6 screws, right? Not that big of a deal. This can definitely get caught on your pants if you pull it out at the wrong angle. Don't do that. It's more of a big deal in sweatpants, right? But for the most part, it's just not going to be the case. It's a little bit off center. It's annoying, but it can be fixed. Truthfully, I really do like this knife. It's cool and it's different. And I see so much. Every knife that comes out in the budget world right now is a G10 and steel liner lock flipper, or G10 and steel liner lock thumb stud opener, or maybe it's got a hole in it and it's slightly different than and that's great. I'm glad there's so many choices out there, but this manages to be ergonomic. It manages to be, you know, easy to manipulate and fun to manipulate and comfortable to manipulate, right? And it's ergonomic. It's using good materials. The blade profile is good. Handle profile is good. Yeah, this is something that I could see myself reaching for, being able to conveniently pull from my pocket, deploy, use, you know, and it would do well, and then I could put it back away. I think that it would do fine with that. There's a few things that I might change, but it's not enough to where I can say, no, this isn't worth it, right? The centering thing's kind of a bummer, but maybe this is just a weird one, or maybe the handle screws came loose and it caused the centering to be off even when it's tightened all the way down. In any case, this is a recommendable knife. I think this is a pretty darn good budget knife, and I know like a budget, it's $69. Budget knives for me is anything under 75 bucks. I know that's weird. Some people say 100, some people say 50, some people say 20. For me, it's under 75 bucks. That's a budget knife to me. So yeah, at 60 bucks, this is gonna go on my most recommended knives playlist, as well as my cheap knives I like playlist. I think this is pretty darn good. Like I said, you can check it out in the description. I will leave links down there to this knife and all of its variants, as well as steel wheel knives in general if you want to see what else they have available. Guys, be sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.